Hello, everyone. Welcome. We'll get started in just a few moments. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to give folks just a minute or two more to hop in. We would love for y'all to
Y'all
introduce yourself in the chat if you are so inclined, and we'll get started in just a minute. If you're just joining us, please go ahead and say hello in the chat, and we'll get started in just about a minute's time. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to CSR Marketplace Virtual 2026 and today's session, which is focused on empowering employees and partners through corporate giving and sponsored by our friends at CAF America. My name is Katie Stearns. I'm the Vice President of Membership and Partnerships at ACCP, and it's great to have you with us. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to join us and listen in to some expertise and wisdom from our friends at CAF America. You might be aware that ACCP is the premier membership association for corporate social impact practitioners, and all of our programs, including this week's CSR Marketplace Virtual, are designed to advance our mission to share knowledge, to foster solutions, and to cultivate a community of peers. So we're glad you're in that community today. This is one of 8 sessions that ACCP is hosting as part of this year's CSR Marketplace Virtual. We've got some great content lined up, as you can see, and registration remains open for the upcoming sessions. So if you see another one that catches your eye, we invite you to get registered and hop in and join us a little bit later in the week as well. We are recording all of the sessions, and those recordings will be posted to ACCP's website next week and then available for your viewing pleasure through the end of 2026. Before we get started, I want to highlight some of the other upcoming ACCP programs and events. If you happen to be based in sunny Chicago, like me, there is still time to join us for the in-person CSR Exchange event coming up next Tuesday, June 23rd. That's just one of the local events that we are hosting this year. We will also be making visits to Seattle, New York, Philly, LA, and Minneapolis. So if you are in one of those locations, we'd love to see you. Coming up on July 9th, our members are invited to join us for a virtual topical member discussion, which is an inside sneak peek preview of the findings from our latest CSR Insights survey. And then on July 15th, members and non-members alike are welcome to join us for a full discussion of the results from that survey. If you're curious about ACCP membership or want to know more about the benefits, we hope you'll join us for a deep dive on July 16th. And then finally, do not miss the ACCP conference. This is the event of the year for corporate social impact practitioners. We're going to be in Boston in September, and early bird registration ends next Friday, June 26th. So we encourage you to check that out soon. More info about all of these events and many more is also available at our website at accp.org. Okay, a few Zoom logistics before we jump in. First, we have turned on closed captioning and live transcript today. So if you'd like to see the full transcript, you can look for that CC icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then click on the caret to select View Full Transcript. We also hope that you will interact with us throughout today's session. So please say hello to our speakers, chat with each other using that Zoom chat feature. And we also will save time at the end for questions. So please, throughout today's program, if you have questions, feel free to pop them into the Q&A feature so that we can discuss them live at the end of our time together. Okay, with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today on this great topic. Joining us from CAF America is Ben Tschida, who is the Director of Corporate Client Services. And Ben, I'm turning it over to you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. So thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Ben Tschida. I'm the Director of Corporate Client Services here at CAF America. Every day, our team works with companies to design and/or implement grant-making programs that are both impactful, compliant, and helping to move resources to social purpose organizations around the world. I've invited two of our clients here today to join me as well for this discussion, and I would be great if they could come on camera and introduce themselves. Christina, why don't you go first, and then Victoria, you can go next.
Hi, thank you, Ben. I'm excited to be here. So I'm Executive Director of the Analog Devices Foundation. Um, Analog Devices is a global semiconductor leader. We have the physical and digital world, and we look at kind of breaking through the intelligent edge with our semiconductors. And so my role is responsible for workplace giving and our volunteer programs and supporting more than 25,000 employees from around the world. Thank you.
Thank you. Victoria, do you want to come on camera and introduce yourself?
I'd love to come on camera, except that I'm not allowed to. So if someone gives me permission, I'm happy to do it. Start my video. Thank you. There we go. Hi, thanks for having me, Ben. My name is Victoria Ivanovich. I work for HCL Tech, which is a global systems integrator headquartered out of Noida, India. We are a company 220,000 strong, and my day job is actually in AI. But on the side, I serve on our Corporate Social Responsibility Council, especially here in the Americas, and have been actively involved for all 3 years of a grant where we are giving away $5 million for climate change projects. And then also, I am the local CSR chair for my local region in North Carolina, where I'm located.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'll just give everybody a little bit of background on CAF America, who we are, and then we'll dive into the discussion with Christina and Victoria. So, who is the Charities Aid Foundation? We really exist to accelerate progress in society towards a fair and sustainable future for everyone. Over the last 100 years, we've led the way in developing innovative approaches for giving. Annually, we distribute about $1.4 billion to social purpose organizations around the world. We're active in the UK as Charities Aid Foundation, here in the US as CAF America, and up in Canada as CAF Canada. Really, we see ourselves as the center of the giving world, partnering with both corporations and individuals to enable them to give with greater impact and provide strategic support to social purpose organizations to do more of that life-changing work. So there's a number of different ways that we're working with employee engagement strategies. The status quo is really helping to partner and facilitate employee nominations to organizations around the world to become eligible for match a gift programs. A lot of times companies are matching their employees' giving, and then other times they're helping to schedule volunteer events and also sometimes offering dollars to those volunteer hours as well. And if anyone's ever tried to give an international grant before, it's very complex. So that's where you come in to help support with those IRS regulations and helping to make sure that it's compliant. And so today, we really want to dive into some trends that we've been seeing in the corporate giving space. So really what we're seeing is people are looking to move beyond just giving dollars into a community, but how can they instead give with that community where those dollars are going? Historically, corporate philanthropy programs have typically been centralized inside the foundation with executives and the CSR teams determining where funding's going. Well, that approach drives meaningful impact. expectations are changing. Employees, the nonprofit partners, and the local communities are increasingly wanting a seat at the table in making those funding decisions. Today, employees want more than just a matching gift program or an annual volunteer event. They want to support causes they care about, help contribute to that decision making, and ultimately see a clear connection between their values and their company's social impact efforts. As a result, many organizations are exploring what we like to call stakeholder agency. Stakeholder agency is about creating meaningful opportunities for the employees, nonprofit partners, and communities to influence the grant making decisions. This isn't about giving up strategic control or abandoning companies' priorities. It's really about bringing the perspective of those closest to the issues into the process. So ultimately, the goal isn't simply greater participation in the process. It's creating grant-making programs that are going to be more relevant, more trusted, and more effective at driving impact in those local communities. So something I would like to ask you both is, in the context of how you guys are doing corporate giving, how would you define stakeholder agency? Victoria, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'll take that first. So, actually, one of the things that I absolutely love about corporate social responsibility at HCL Tech is in the Americas, where I live, especially, but I believe globally, is that as employees, we do have a fair amount of input and agency when it comes to our CSR programs. In fact, I liked the way you framed it, Ben, where you said it's not about removing governance, it's just about giving more choice and more decision making. The company has framed for us 4 pillars for which our CSR platforms that form our CSR platform: education, health, um, mentorship, and equity kind of spaces. And within them, we also have corporate partnerships. For example, we have a large corporate sponsorship partnership with Feeding America. But within that, Feeding America has 95,000 different entities for which you could choose to do. And so, as the lead here in North Carolina, where I am, we take that guidance and say, okay, where can we have the most impact in our local community? And we have the ability to select where we work. We try to always have at least a quarterly event that's tied directly with Feeding America, but we also have done literacy programs, we've done summer programs, and for my area in particular, where we have 2,000 employees, my goal is to make sure that every person of in my area of those 2,000 employees has something that catches their eye, right? You don't have to do everything, just one thing that makes sense to you. And that also helps because uh, you know uh, employees could get a little tired. Let's be very transparent. If you're always going back to the same 12 and saying, okay, here's the next event, let's go there, right? Eventually they get tired, their leaders get tired. It's kind of like, what are we doing? So we tend to come up with a pretty diverse calendar mapped to those 4 pillars of our platform and give the opportunity for as many people to participate as would choose.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Christina, how would you define stakeholder agency?
Yeah, so Analog Devices is a global company. So I mentioned 25,000 employees, 30 plus countries. And so for us, our founder, we were founded 60 years ago, and his belief was you hire great people and you get out of the way. They know what they're doing. And so we believe that to be true with our giving as well. We want to empower our employees to be engaged and to share in that ownership. And so for us, it was about creating those opportunities. I mean, providing clear guardrails, right? And being transparent about how they can go about participating. And so for us, it was the different ways that they could engage, not just through, that direct one-to-one giving or through a Dollars for Doers program, but it was also the ability for them to have a voice in our community grants program. So
Hmm.
we focus on three areas: protecting the environment, improving education to access, and advancing societal change. And through that, our employees can share with us and nominate organizations that they're already passionate about and engaged with for a community grant. And we have a tiered process that we look at. We have a grant advisory committee that's comprised of about a dozen employees from around the globe that we meet with monthly and review the nominations. And so for us, it was really important that there was that employee voice there, that
Hmm.
they understand that they have a meaningful influence over those priorities and the funding decisions, and what defines success in their community.
Hmm. Yeah. And with that employee advisory committee, are people on there for a certain term? Like how often are you rotating out those 12 employees?
Yeah, we started initially about 6 years ago where we were doing 1 year
Hmm.
of service and rotating folks out. And then, there were a few people that, were asking if they could stay longer. So now we've put them into, rotations when
Hmm.
it might be more challenging, jobs change. And so it's kind of dependent on the region and the requirements that we have, but it really continues to grow.
Hmm. Yeah. And I guess for either one of you here, would you say that this concept has become more important recently? So if we sort of look back 5, 10 years ago, have we seen this as a change that's been happening recently? And sort of how have you seen that reflected in your organizations?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think it definitely has become more important. I think, especially for early in career
Hmm.
employees, they know where they want to put their time. They know where they want to put their resources. They know where they want to put their money. And to have to have them participate, it has to be aligned with their personal value system and where they want to invest. And it
Hmm.
is an investment. I think that's the big difference is the company understands that it's not just an investment by the company that says we're going to work in these spaces or we're going to do things in these spaces. It's an investment by the employees to say, I genuinely believe that this is going to make the world a better place. And
Hmm.
we hear that a lot at our events. We hear that a lot when we're deciding the calendar. I want to make the world a better place. And especially in the tech space. And I think Christina would see this too, right? You kind of hear the tech space in the news a lot. You don't always hear the tech space presented in Make the World a Better Place. So
Hmm.
it's able to give a different lens to the work that we do in our day jobs and in the CSR kind of areas.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I've read in a number of studies too, it's also a great employee retention tool that when you're giving
Yeah.
them great programs, they feel more invested and they're more likely to stick around longer.
Yeah.
that's right. Having that voice and feeling that they're heard,
Hmm.
and that they're not pushed into one area that everyone, can only focus on STEM education and mentoring. Well, you know what? There are some people that like to spend their weekend at a food bank, or
Hmm.
their nights helping with animal care. And so it's important that we're supportive of that.
Great. And with that, I would love to push a poll question out to the audience here. Do your employees influence grant decisions today? And do you think your company effectively implements stakeholder agency currently? All right. So, how are we engaging with our employees? So, Christina, for you, what are sort of some tools or program structures that you have in place to get more active participation from your employees?
So some of the tools we have, I mentioned dollars for doers,
Mhm.
and so for every hour that an employee volunteers, they could choose for that to be turned into funds to go back to the nonprofit that they volunteered with. 1 hour equals $20 of volunteerism. So it really is that opportunity for them to connect back and to
Mhm.
show that their time and their service is valuable as a financial contribution. I mentioned our community grant nominations. So that's another way that they can be involved and have that ownership and that voice in really having, because they have such an experience with a particular cause.
Mhm.
And then we also have an employee resource group that we call the Community Activities Board. And that's the opportunity for employees to engage and help to support larger projects, donation, cause driven opportunities that come along that they'd like to share out with other colleagues.
Mhm. Yeah, and with that doers program, do you guys have sort of a cap that you would allow the employee, like you can get X number of dollars per year for this number of hours volunteered?
Yeah, for our employees, between our matching gifts and our matching gifts for volunteering, we allow up to $5,000 per year.
That's great. And we're happy to play a small role in helping to facilitate some of those international grants for those tour programs. Um, and so, Victoria, I would love to jump over to you. And I think a really great example of stakeholder agency is the climate action grant that you guys have. So I would love if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so and we're very grateful for CAF America's help with that grant. So we actually have, as I said in my introduction, $5 million in grant money over a 5 years, $1 million a year to grant for NGOs who are directly running projects for climate action, and that is for the Americas. So it's from Canada to Argentina, all the way through the Americas. Um, and This was a new space for HCL Tech's foundation, which had been primarily in India, and then corporate social responsibility activities kind of scattered among the 93 countries in which HCL Tech operates. But in terms of a large granting program, this was very new to the Americas. So we really needed a partner who could come in and help us do two things. One, give us some governance, because it was new to all of us. Secondly, it's an international grant, and as you spoke about, that's an important piece to be able to work through that. But then, where I was particularly energized is that the foundation came to all of us CSR leads and said, "Hey, we want you to be active in this." And so I have had the privilege of doing site visits for four NGOs over the last 3 years, where I've actually gone out and seen on the ground the work that they're doing. So while CAF has really helped us with the paperwork part, right? And the vetting of, do you meet the financial qualifications? Are you a solvent NGO? All those things, which honestly, thank you for doing that, because I think I'd put forks in my eyes if that was my. We get to actually go out and meet the people on the ground and see the impact. And I can tell you, from my chair, having done this for 3 years now, every year the game is upped
Mhm.
exponentially. The NGOs that are coming out and applying for this grant are doing amazing, amazing things. So even though we have 10 semifinalists and we have to get down to 3 finalists, and which means that 7 don't get granted, it's not because they don't deserve it. So we're
Mhm.
very grateful for the partnership, and I'm grateful for the ability to be able to go out and just spend a whole day with a nonprofit to say, show me everything you got, show me what you do, let me talk to some of the people whose lives you're changing. And to be able to do that is incredibly heartwarming. And for me, then I get to carry that story back. and I get to tell my peers and I get to tell senior leadership, time and
Hmm.
energy in this work is not wasted in any way. And that your return on investment for sending me out into the field for 1 day a year is going to be quadrupled when our employees hear about the work that these organizations are doing through the grant. So it's just a win, 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 win. One of the organizations that I worked with last year, who ended up being one of the finalists, now local HCL Tech employees have come in and volunteer with them once a month
Hmm.
just because of knowing about them, knowing that they exist and what they do.
That's great. Yeah. And I also really like not only are you guys sending employees out to visit the nonprofits in person, you're really integrating them throughout the process. So in helping to do those, finalist application reviews to winnow down to that top 10, sitting in on the interviews, bringing in your technical experts to really ask that question. So it's not just one employee going out, it's a whole group of employees that are involved in the entire decision-making process.
And I mean, and there's the other benefit. I'll just say one more thing there, Ben, is in the Americas, of course, we don't all speak English or not English as our
Mhm.
primary language. We are grateful to be a global company that we can do those in the native language of whatever country we happen to be sitting in, which is
Mhm.
also a really big deal for them and for us.
Mhm. Yeah. And then next, just to wrap us up here, challenges. As we're sitting down and thinking about this model with stakeholder agency, what are the biggest operational or compliance challenges when trying to allow for more flexible action by the grantees when we're granting to them?
Christina, do you want to go first?
Yeah, you want me to take that? I mean, in terms of challenges, for us when we were thinking about, programs and having our employees, be connected and have that voice since, they're the real connection to the community. Um, it was important that we understood as a global company about cross-border
Mhm.
compliance and, documentation and auditing and the use of funds and that our partnership with CAFA, and I know this is, not to overshare, but that relationship has been just exceptional. We could not achieve what we do without the relationship with CAF America. It truly is something that was a challenge for us, and that we were concerned with. All of these employees are going to have a voice, and there are so many charities out there in the world. I mean, literally millions. How are
Mhm.
we going to ensure that we are supporting the right organizations? Because we want to empower our employees. Who do we partner with? Who can we,
Mhm.
bring to the table to manage that due diligence? And that's really, I mean, not having that burden and worry
Mhm.
with the partnership with CAF America, I think that is the most important thing that we have. So I thank you and your team for that.
Thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, Ben, I'm going to double down on that. I think the other thing is that, again, employees want to do good and they have so many options to choose from. The ability for CAF America to partner with us and to build in that governance for us, you in your due diligence, you highlight things that we may not see, right? Oh, this be a little bit concerned about this company, their financial um, bottom line is not so strong. And, is that really where you want to invest your money? If you're going to give somebody a grant of $250,000, you want to make sure that the money's going where it needs to go. Still,
Mhm.
and to be able to provide some of that governance and caution. I know in our process for the Americas grant, there's a lot of guidelines that you talk about. Make sure when you speak with these people, when you interview these NGOs, here's some good questions to ask because we don't that's not our day job. For
Mhm.
most of the employees in my company, maybe all but 10 out of 220,000, that's not our day job. Our day
Mhm.
job is bringing AI to the world, right?
Hmm.
I'm not thinking about those kinds of things. And yet I still have that stakeholder investment to say, I want to make sure we're giving our money to the right places and that we're giving our time and our talents to the right places, and to be able to have that um, unbiased, governance and guidance to say, look, we're able to vet these organizations for you, and we can tell you, wholeheartedly, this one's all green, you can go forward. This one we have some reservations about. Ask some questions,
Hmm.
go a little deeper. And that's very, very valuable.
And then before we turn it over to the audience for any questions they may have, I think just a question for you both. If an organization wanted to start building more stakeholder agency into their grant making process, what sort of one small change they could make or one piece of advice that you guys would give them?
I'm going to tell you one piece of advice that I think is often overlooked, and when you talk about stakeholder agency, is um, a process by which senior leaders are actively involved in the program, especially in a large organization like mine that has a lot of early in career employees. If they see a vice president out at a community farm, picking vegetables,
Hmm.
that's an incredible statement of commitment on behalf of the company. So, that to me is a huge piece.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Having that leadership connection and having them be a champion and supportive of these activities is truly priceless. I was recently on a business trip to the Philippines and had the opportunity to go to a volunteer event that leadership was at, and we actually had to turn down volunteers from attending because so many wanted to
Hmm.
partake. With having leadership there was just so important. Um, and again, back to employees and having their voice and having them have that connection back to their community. It drives everything.
Hmm.
One area that I also want to thank you and your team for, Ben, is that you actually have helped us put together some materials for our employees. So they're actually learning
Hmm.
about cross-border giving and how to work and connect more. So with nonprofit partners, of course, under our purview and working together, but
Hmm.
having that agency has really connected us all. And so I think, having this partnership has been wonderful.
Oh, thank you. And with that, I would like to turn it over to the audience if you guys have any questions for us.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Victoria. And yes, I'll echo that. If y'all have questions, please pop them into the Q&A feature or add them to the chat. And while you do that, I would love to get things started with a question of my own. I so appreciated what y'all have been sharing, and I was thinking in particular about what you were saying there in your piece of advice, Christina, about how often we talk about the community like it's separate from our employees, when really the employees are the community. And so that stakeholder engagement is so important. But I know getting to the point of a stable program that can influence that grant making comes with challenges. You spoke about some of them, like compliance and paperwork and all the fun stuff that really keeps us going every day, that makes us all want to show up. But I'm wondering if there are other challenges you have navigated in formalizing your stakeholder agency and in establishing those councils or centering that employee voice, and what lessons learned might be. I know certainly we hear about things like, manager approval, people being concerned about additional responsibility. So would love to hear certainly from both an HCL and analog devices perspective. And then Ben, in your other partnerships, any
Hmm.
challenges and lessons learned you might name for our audience?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
happy to go first, Katie. So Definitely, there are challenges and concerns sometimes about manager approval. Um, we try to put a little bit of governance around that. You know, if you're asking for a day off a month, that might be a little bit much, right? That's 12 days of work that you're out doing things. We do leave it to our senior leadership in the organization to reflect that. Now, I've worked at another company where all employees were given 40 hours for the year, and you could choose to do all 40 in 1 week. I did that one year. I went to Zimbabwe for a week and worked on a rhino conservancy for my 40 hours. But that was it then, right? Like that was it for the year. And I've seen that in our business, that's a little bit challenging because we are a billable hour organization for a lot of our clients. So that's not necessarily easy to do. But I think that that's why I also spoke about getting senior leaders involved because they're much more willing to give time off if they see that the time is well spent, right? And so it's a good balancing act between um, having that capability to take time away from work to do this and then not overusing it. And we leave it to them to kind of manage, but if they see the work, if they see what's happening, they tend to be much more amenable to that kind of effort.
Yeah. Same here with that manager discretion and having that conversation with your manager, what works and what doesn't work. Varies from honestly from day to day, especially if you're on the manufacturing side at our company, right? We try and make sure that we are looking at volunteer opportunities at all time frames to accommodate our employees, but certainly we want to make sure that they are being transparent with their manager and that they are aware of what their day job is as well as their community outlook and spirit there. And when we're looking to bring someone on to our grant advisory committee, we make sure that, I make sure that I have the conversation with them about that commitment and time because we certainly don't want to bring someone into the fold and then have them, a week later saying, I just can't commit. Or for me to have that uncomfortable conversation of, I was hoping you would have more ability to share and to help guide some of these nominations. So it is really that fine balance that Victoria mentioned.
And clear expectations, I'm hearing in what you're saying as well. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Absolutely.
then what would you
We have a
add,
number of
Ben?
clients who have the client advisory committees, and I think that's worked really well. We also have another client who actually opens it up to local employees to vote around issue areas, but they don't ultimately select the end nonprofit grantee. Kind of then once they've decided, hey, we're going to be doing a grant in London, we want to focus on food security. That's where we'll partner together to identify that nonprofit, but also make sure it's getting funding, but then that there's going to be local volunteer opportunities available for those employees to also interact with the organization.
Great, thank you. We have a question from the audience, specifically for Christina and Victoria. Said that you both mentioned that your companies have pillars for support and then also guardrails for employees when it comes to corporate giving. Would you be willing to share what some of those guidelines are to ensure that employee giving recommendations are aligned with those pillars, the mission of the organization, and the business goals?
Yeah, I can start with that. I mean, for HCL Tech, the pillars are set. There's 4 pillars around our corporate social responsibility platform. Each CSR council member for each location actually submits their plan for the year. We submit, here's the organizations we're working with, here's their website, here's their information, and here's what we're proposing that we do. The climate grant, as Ben knows, has a tremendous amount of governance to it, provided by CAF America, which again we're very, very grateful for. But for local CSR activities, it's really around we meet as a council once a quarter and we talk about the initiatives that employees have voted on, have they that they've requested. And there's times that we go back to employees and say, this is a great program. It's not particularly aligned with our goals. And being a global company, we're also very intentional about organizations that may be tied to a religious organization or a particular cultural organization, keeping in mind the global nature of our company. So it's not necessarily it's a bad organization. It's just not, it doesn't fall within our governance. And, I am grateful that the council, we discuss those as a council, including how are you going to deliver that
Mhm.
message to somebody that says, "Hey, dude, we didn't choose your program," without saying it like that. So there is a good sense among the CSR leads that we are doing the right things in the right spaces at the right time. We try to make sure that we don't schedule too many events again in a quarter because then we don't get into issues with management saying, "Hey, I can't let half my team go 3 times a year."
Mhm.
Like we just can't do that. So things like that.
That's great. Christina, anything you would add in terms of some of the guidelines that are in place?
Yeah, we have a guideline handout that our employees have access to where it talks about our impact pillars, those three areas, and a little bit deeper into them as well as our grant advisory committee's criteria, what they look for when they're reviewing those grants. Things we have a tiered approach in the sense that more engagement from employees, a larger number could be a larger grant. Stronger alignment to a particular program could help foster that, a larger impact coming from our foundation. And so we want to be very transparent when we're sharing that information. And as an employee is filling out their nomination form, we have very pointed questions that are asked as well, so that we get a full understanding of not only their engagement, but and their connection to the organization, but the organization itself, their mission, their vision, what area they need help supporting. And that helps to start the dialogue with the employee that the grant committee reviews, before reaching out to the organization themselves and having a deeper conversation.
That's terrific. And I think we have time to squeeze in one more quick question from someone who I'm guessing may also have a global role or global scope. I know, Christina, there was a question in the chat about the overall budget for community grants, and you'd mentioned it's around $1 million. The follow-up question to that is how you think about that in terms of covering the broad range of regions. Is it a certain percentage to each region, or how do you start to subdivide that to cover your footprint?
Yeah, we do have kind of guardrails, if you will, in looking at a regional view of that budget, but it's more loosey-goosey, if you will. We really want that employee engagement, and we don't want it to be, well, we overspent here and we, didn't here. And we also don't want it to be a first in and then you
Mhm.
spend it all and it's out the door by, before the end of the year. So, uh, I know that's not the best answer necessarily, but that is how we look at it. And it does end up being around $1 million a year. Um, and so for that, would I love for it to be $2 million a year? Yes. I can spend and help our communities as much as we can, but we certainly want to make sure that we are addressing every community request that comes across, and that we really do have that engagement from the employee.
Wonderful. Well, that's all the time we have for today, but I want to say a big thank you again to our sponsors at CAF America. We're popping up Ben's contact information here. Ben, any final thoughts for our group?
Just want to say a huge thank you to Christina from Analog Devices and Victoria from HCL Tech for joining me today and really offering that corporate perspective. stakeholder agency much better than I could as someone who just kind of helps out with that process.
Well, we love to hear about partnerships in action. So, big thanks to our special guests and again to you, Ben, and to CAF America. We would love your feedback. So, if you would take a minute to scan the QR code on your screen or click on the link in the chat to just answer 4 questions to share your thoughts about today's session, that helps us plan future events. And we hope to see you all either at another CSR Marketplace virtual event this week or another one of ACCP's upcoming events. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, everybody.